The first day of school was always difficult. But for Valentina, it was a true nightmare. From the very moment she walked through the cafeteria door, she was carrying a tray of food with trembling hands. She wasn't just new to the school. She came from a home where silence hurt more than shouting. Although no one there knew her story, her lowered gaze and uncertain steps spoke louder than 1,000 words. Teacher Camila Ortega had noticed her, not with compassion, but with disdain. To her, Valentina didn't fit in. She didn't speak like the other girls, didn't dress like them, and worst of all, she had transferred from a modest public school. Camila considered that transfer a stain on the reputation of the prestigious private school where she taught. When Valentina sat quietly and began to eat slowly, trying not to draw attention, the teacher approached with firm steps and a harsh expression. Without saying a word, Camila grabbed the metal tray and, in front of all the children, dumped it into the trash. She let the food fall as if it were worthless, as if Valentina were worthless. The sound of metal hitting plastic was so loud that the entire cafeteria fell silent as the girl burst into tears. In a cold voice, the teacher told her that wasting food and dirtying the uniform was not allowed, accusing her of something she hadn't done. The children watched, frozen, some afraid, others ashamed, because no one dared to stand up to Miss Ortega. Miss Ortega was known for her authoritarian character and her closeness to the school administration. What no one knew was that this was no ordinary day. At that very moment, the man walking through the cafeteria door was Alejandro Montoya, a millionaire businessman. He had built his fortune from nothing and, after the death of his sister, had decided to become more involved in the life of his only niece, Valentina. When Alejandro saw the scene, his world stopped and his hands began to tremble from a silent rage, known only to those who have suffered humiliation. He walked slowly, observing every detail: the food in the trash, the tear-stained face of the girl, the teacher's arrogant posture. When Valentina looked up and recognized him, her lips trembled even more because she knew she shouldn't cry, but couldn't stop. Alejandro knelt in front of her, hugged her tightly, and softly told her everything would be okay. Then he stood up, looked the teacher in the eyes, and calmly asked her to explain what had happened. Camila, believing herself untouchable, responded arrogantly that she was simply teaching discipline and some children needed to learn their place. Those words were the trigger. Alejandro didn't raise his voice or shout. He simply took out his phone and made a call. In less than 10 minutes, the cafeteria filled with administrators, supervisors, and educational authorities summoned by Alejandro. Alejandro was not only a millionaire, he was also one of the largest donors to the country's education system. What followed was a lesson no one would ever forget. The teacher was immediately removed. The children witnessed that power doesn't always humiliate. Sometimes it protects. Valentina, holding her uncle's hand, heard for the first time that her story was not a shame, but a strength. Alejandro spoke to everyone, not with money, but with truth, saying a school is not a place to destroy children, but to lift them up. The cafeteria became a stage for justice, where the girl who had been humiliated walked out with her head held high. The teacher learned that no title justifies cruelty. If this story touched your heart and you believe no child deserves to be treated this way, subscribe to the channel so we can keep giving a voice to those who were once silenced. The silence that remained after Camila Ortega was escorted out was heavy and uncomfortable, as everyone processed what they had witnessed. For years, that place had been ruled by blind obedience and fear disguised as discipline. Valentina still clung to her uncle Alejandro's hand, not yet daring to believe it was over. The children looked at her differently, not as the new girl or the one who had been humiliated, but as someone who had survived something unjust. Aware of every gaze, Alejandro asked permission to speak not as a millionaire or benefactor, but as someone who knew pain from the inside. He began telling a story no one expected, a story explaining why that moment was so personal to him. He revealed that as a child he had gone through